Uh-oh, why am I talking about this? It's going to make a bunch of people feel sad. There's going to be talk of mental illness, specifically depression, anxiety, and anxiety attacks in particular. Also, weirdly, it gets into some Lovecraftian eldritch horror in the middle. I don't know why I'm like this. If you're sensitive to any of that sort of thing, maybe give this one a rest. You don't need to watch this video. That's fine. You don't need to gumming up your brain emotions. I've linked to a video in the description. It's some puppies. Go watch the puppy video. You've earned it. Also in the description are some resources that you can use in case you're in crisis. If you are, I urge you to take advantage of those resources, because a YouTube video probably isn't going to help you that much. And to be clear, I can't be your support network. I'm sorry. This video is about a very serious subject, but you know me. I can't go 20 minutes without saying some sort of goofy word like ragamuffin or lollygag. I'm not going to bum you out. Give me a chance. The video starts now. Something happened to me that changed my life a couple of years ago. I was going through a tough time. I don't particularly remember why, but I was having this intense outburst of hysterical, apoplectic sadness. I was a sobbing, delusional mess for a few hours, and then, as quickly as it came, it just stopped. And I felt normal again, or at least as close to normal as I get. By itself, this is nothing special. That had been happening to me my entire life. I remember distinctly it happened when I was 6 or 7 years old. I was out on the playground, it was recess or some shit, and nobody wanted to hang out with me or play with me. And that was pretty normal for me. I was not a popular child. And suddenly, it occurred to me, oh my God, nobody wants to be around me. I mean, my dad left before I was born. That's got to be my fault, right? And my grandfather was a ship's captain, so he was away most of the year. He must have taken that job to get away from me, even though he took it decades before I was born. And so I screamed and cried for a few hours until suddenly I felt normal and fine. This happened much more often when I was younger. There was a period between the ages of like 11 to 20 where this was happening to me like several times a week. Just these enormous outpourings of emotions, and then like a switch flipped and I was fine. I was used to it, but I was deeply ashamed of it because I thought it made my emotions difficult to take seriously. Sure, you're emotional now, but in a moment, you're going to feel normal and be embarrassed by how upset you just were. So this day, I was with my girlfriend when it happened, and I say to her, wow, I'm really sorry I freaked out like that. I know it's weird. I'm fine now. Don't worry about me. This just happens sometimes. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, you don't have to apologize for having an anxiety attack. And I said, what the fuck are you talking about? I had never in my 30 years on this earth considered these episodes to be anxiety attacks. I had seen dozens of mental health professionals explain the same symptoms to them over and over, and none of them had ever used the term anxiety attack. I've brought it up with other mental health professionals since, and they've all told me that, yeah, sounds like you're just having some plain old anxiety attacks, dog. Not their exact words. It's difficult for me to overstate the impact this realization had on my life. I've known for a very long time I was mentally ill. I've been treated for it for a very long time. But the episodes that I now recognize as some sort of anxiety attack, that was something I was totally alone with. That was something I couldn't explain to anyone. The closest thing I can compare the feeling to is like having a bad trip on psychedelic drugs. Except I'm usually not on drugs when it happens. I mean, maybe I've had a lot of coffee or smoked some weed, but that's about it. It's like your brain is firing at 100% manufacturing reasons to believe your worst fears or whatever would make you most sad are somehow happening to you right now, but also they always were and also always will be, and there is no escape no matter what you do. The emotions are so strong that they physically hurt my body. I feel literal physical pain because I'm sad or scared, and I just really want to drive that point home. I am not speaking in euphemism here. I am speaking literally. It physically hurts me. And there are other physical side effects. I have difficulty breathing because I'm just crying so hard, and my mind and body begin to slow down, and I have difficulty getting my thoughts out. I can't tell you how scary that is for me, as someone who takes great pride in their ability to get words out of their brain and into the air from their mouth very quickly and eloquently. Just look at that amazing sentence I just said. Occasionally, I have a recurring delusion during these attacks that I am the Antichrist. The only evidence that my bonkers cuckoo brain can cook up for this is that I feel like I'm less of a person than other people somehow, and that my birthday is June 25th, which is kind of the opposite of Christmas. And I know that Christmas isn't generally considered to be the actual historical birthday of Jesus, if such a person even existed. I'm not even religious. I don't believe in God or the divinity of Christ, but none of that matters. Because you can't logic your way out of a delusion. It's just something that you're very scared of. And therefore, during an anxiety attack, in that moment, I'm absolutely certain it's true. It's very silly, and I can laugh about it right now, but I know for a fact there's going to come a day, probably pretty soon, when I'm lying in bed, crying my little brains out, and absolutely 100% convinced that it's true. Again. Thing is, I don't know anybody else that experiences anxiety or depression in this way. I know that each of my symptoms are listed somewhere in the DSM-5 in the list of things that people with this particular cocktail of emotional problems tend to have, but I don't know anyone who goes through acute periods of wailing despair, delusional thinking, a complete scouring of the psyche followed immediately by relief. I know plenty of people who are depressed. I know plenty of people with anxiety disorders. I know plenty of people with both. I have never met or even heard of anyone who experiences this the same way that I do. And that's very isolating. It made me feel pretty invalidated. I mean, if this is just me, if this isn't a known thing, then it's not mental illness. And that means I'm just broken, or I can't handle stress, or maybe these moments where everything feels terrible are the actual truth, and I don't have the emotional stamina to feel it all the time. I mean, how do you explain to somebody that occasionally I just lose my mind for a few hours, become a delusional, sobbing mess, and then, as quickly as it started, just feel better, go about my day? That I always feel like I'm building towards one of these breakdowns that could happen to me at any moment, and so every single bit of stress, fear, or shame that I experience makes me afraid that this is going to happen to me again? What if it happens while I'm in public? What if it happens while I'm at work? Both of those things did happen eventually, but it didn't make me any less afraid of them. So I just learned bit by bit to walk away from anything I'm afraid of, to avoid all stress, all potential sources of shame, guilt, or disappointment. I wouldn't do things that might make me happy because what if I fail at them? I'll just feel worse. The shame will overcome me until my life became me just sitting on a couch, afraid to leave the apartment, unable to confront all the problems I'm having because they might make me stressed. They might make me ashamed. They might make me freak out. Now, I'm not trying to flex here, but I'm particularly good at being afraid. I'm afraid of lots of things. Spiders, heights, lions, the inevitability of death, the fact that I have veins in my body. Why do I gotta think about veins? My whole body is full of little tubes that can get fucked up and I can die, and oh God, they're everywhere on my body. They're in my eyes, and my optometrist made me look at them. I'm also afraid of positive things. I was afraid to start making YouTube videos. I was afraid to start showing my face in them. I was afraid to start skateboarding earlier this year. And no matter how many times I practice, every time I step onto the skateboard, I'm still afraid. Now, I'm not afraid of public speaking. I'm not afraid of people seeing my face. I'm not really afraid of falling off of a skateboard because it's kind of hilarious. What I'm afraid of is that I won't make good enough videos for my own personal standards. People will criticize my appearance and I won't be able to handle it. Or I will just never get good at skateboarding, and that will send me into a shame spiral that results in an anxiety attack. Because the greatest source of my anxiety is my fear of anxiety attacks. The second is veins. What if I sit down wrong and one of them snaps? My doctor says that my cholesterol is fine, but what if they measured wrong and my veins are full of goo? But all my life, I didn't have the words to explain it. It was just me freaking out and being a shitty guy. It's not a thing. I thought, I don't deserve sympathy or empathy or compassion because it's not real. It's just a character flaw. It's just weakness. The only thing you can do about it is try to develop more self-control and try to force myself to be better at dealing with it. And then I'd feel worse about it when that technique inevitably failed because that will never work. All that changed when I had a name for it. When I realized it was something other people were experiencing, something in the world that I already knew about and thought I understood, something I would never judge another person for experiencing. Suddenly, I felt grounded. My entire life was reframed into a different perspective. These episodes weren't my fault. It wasn't a failure on my part to contain my suffering. They're just a thing that happens to me. A thing that lots of other people have designed complex and reliable coping strategies for. A lot of deeply ignorant people talk about others using their mental illness as an excuse to avoid personal growth. And that attitude is dangerous because it reinforces the paralytic shame that actually keeps people from experiencing personal growth. That belief is so toxic that I internalized it to the point that I hand-waved away my occasional delusion that I'm the Antichrist as not real mental illness. If a stranger sat next to you on the bus and said to you, "Hi there, I'm really worried I might be the Antichrist because of the day that my birthday is," what would you assume about that person's mental health? I was avoidant of everything that stressed me out for fear that I would break down because I refused to accept that my very obvious mental illness was legitimate. The second I had a name for it, the second I could share my experiences with others, suddenly all of those things got a lot easier for me. And the amount of growth that I have achieved as a result in the couple of years since I came to understand I was having anxiety attacks is greater than the amount I managed in the rest of my adult life combined. I no longer constantly feel the need to avoid negative stimuli, a thing I didn't even know I was doing. I've made more friends in the past 2 years than I did in the preceding 10. I can actually risk the possibility that things that are otherwise good for me might trigger anxiety attacks. I can check my credit score without worrying that a bad score might send me into a tailspin. It still might send me into a tailspin, but I'm not afraid of tailspins as much anymore. Still though, a lot of lunkheads insist that self-flagellation and shaming build character. Don't go easy on yourself. Don't be kind to yourself. No excuses, weakling. A non-generous part of me wants to say that I think some people are looking for an excuse not to have compassion for others, to not believe them when they talk about things they struggle with. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's more complicated than that. Some people who talk like this, I would guess probably most people that talk like this, are trying to help. They have good intentions. They think they're giving you a hard truth that if you come to accept, it will ultimately make your life easier. The problem is, they're wrong. Pop quiz hot shot, question 1. Imagine a young child showing you a drawing they made of their favorite superhero, Marvel's NFL Super Pro. Google it, it's real. You size up their drawing and decide you want to encourage them to keep it up and develop their artistic skill. Would you say to them, A, cool drawing, buddy, or B, wow, that's terrible. There's no perspective, the pose isn't dynamic at all, the anatomy is completely wrong, he doesn't even have arms, you just drew little lines. Are you trying? Honestly, take the time to practice the fundamentals before showing off your work, because this is pathetic. No one would look at this and think it's a good drawing, it's objectively bad. If you said B, no you wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. That's really weird. That would be a weird thing to do. Because you recognize fundamentally that if you want to encourage someone to do something, it's better to do that with positivity than with shame and ridicule. Question 2. Your best friend comes to you and says, "Hey, I've been having a real hard time lately. I feel really alone. I have nobody to talk to. And honestly, my life is a mess right now. I have all these things piling up that I can't seem to take care of. And the more that piles up, the harder it feels to get started, and I don't know what to do." Assuming that you wanted to help this person cope with their problems, would you say, A, I'm really sorry to hear that. You can always talk to me. I know things are tough for you right now, but I believe you can pull through this, and I'll help you however I can. Try not to focus on everything you have to get done, but instead take it one thing at a time so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. Or B, oh my God, get over yourself. Nobody can fix your problems but you, asshole. Boo-hoo, crybaby. Did you know that there's starving people in the world who I definitely care about all of the time and don't just use as a rhetorical device to shut down people who complain about problems I'm not prepared to deal with? If you answered B, you goofed. That answer might make you feel very morally superior to your friend, but it's going to make it harder for them to actually overcome their emotional problem. Now, on top of whatever was bothering them in the first place, they also have to deal with the added shame of feeling bad about feeling bad. It's not productive, and it's not going to help them grow. Finally, question 3. This one's a little bit tougher. A lot of people struggle with this one, so pay close attention. Imagine that you yourself are going through a tough time. When you compare yourself to your peers, you feel like you're falling short. You begin to suspect that everyone in your life resents you and thinks you're a loser or a failure. You haven't yet accomplished the things in life that you wanted to accomplish by this age. You don't feel like you're particularly good at anything, and that you're essentially a drain on the resources of an already dying planet. You got a pile of dirty dishes in the sink, you have no clean clothes because you haven't done laundry in forever, you're running out of food and you've eaten toast with sriracha on it 3 times this week. Maybe you haven't even showered in a couple of days, and instead of attending to any of these problems, you just got high and watched Mandy on Shudder and beat all of the missions in the PS4 Spider-Man game, even though you were supposed to be writing a script for your YouTube channel Thoughtslime. Wait, actually, forget about that last part. Do you say to yourself, hey, what's wrong with me? I'm such a piece of shit. Why can't I just be normal and maintain a normal life like everybody else? I'll never be happy. I'll always fuck things up. This is all my fault. Or B, wow, I'm not doing so great. Maybe I should take a walk or spend some time with friends or meditate or some shit, whatever helps me personally, and then get started on the shit I need to do. If you answered A, you're not helping yourself. You're not really being honest with yourself. I mean, it might feel like you are because it's something you don't want to hear and you've been conditioned to believe that anything that is difficult to hear must therefore be the truth. But what you're telling yourself is a lie. You know what? It's time for me to tell you an actual hard truth that you probably need to hear. Here's what everybody secretly knows is true, but that everybody but me is afraid to say out loud. It's okay to struggle with stuff sometimes, even stuff that might be inconsequential to others. You're not weak or broken just because you're in pain. And nothing is going to change until you're able to be kind and gentle to yourself. A lot of people will not understand. They might even be shitty to you about it. Most of them are scared of the idea that our minds are not something we truly control. They're just something we inhabit. That our minds, which we rely on, can malfunction and throw our lives into disarray, even if we take perfect care of them. Our thoughts aren't us. Our thoughts are like cars. You can drive a car, you can usually control where it goes, but sometimes cars break down or run out of gas or drift in the wrong direction. These people would prefer to live with the comforting lie that we're in control of everything our minds do. That their choices, feelings, and behaviors are theirs. They're the logical outcome of their conscious choices. That cognition is somehow magically not affected by material reality. It's just a superpower that we can direct any way we choose. In reality, all of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are the arbitrary results of chemicals squirting around in our head meat. The processes that our head meat go through, which are almost completely imperceptible to us, are not always in our best interests because they're extremely complex programs that were designed by the selective pressures of an indifferent universe. Most of the programming was written when we were a different kind of animal that had to worry about jaguars and birds of prey. And now we're upright apes who spend the majority of our time absorbing stress from continents away that we personally have absolutely no control over, and our programming doesn't know what the fuck to do with that. Something seems dangerous? Okay, don't worry about it. It's me, your brain. I know how to handle this. I'm going to squirt out the same chemicals that I would squirt out if you saw a cobra. And then your conscious mind is like, wait, what? There's no cobra here. Why am I so scared? What could make me this scared if it's not a cobra? It must be whatever would make me most scared. That's gotta be it. It's not that we have no control, it's just that we don't have full control, and it's childish to think that we ever could. Now, that doesn't absolve you of your personal responsibilities. However, it can explain why sometimes meeting those responsibilities is more difficult for you than it logically should be. So you're left with a choice. You can be mad at yourself for not being in full control of your mind, despite the fact that literally nobody is, and just hope against all evidence to the contrary that getting mad enough will give you more control over yourself, that making yourself feel worse will somehow magically result in you feeling better. Or you can accept that sometimes shit is hard for you for reasons that aren't your fault and you can't control. I believe that accepting that is more likely to give you the strength and energy required to actually cope with your problems. You can still do everything that anyone else can do, but you might need to take special accommodations for yourself to do some things. If you try to force your brain to work like you think it should, it's only going to frustrate the shit out of you and make you feel worse. All of that is easy to say, it's much harder to do. I'll give you an example. I really struggled writing this because, if I'm being honest with you, I've been in a really dark place for the past few weeks. And I never want you, the audience, to see that for a lot of reasons that are mostly just excuses to hide my vulnerability. I'm white and look like a dude, and my mental illness could be compounded by 1,000 other factors that make it harder for other people in the world who don't have as easy a time as I do speaking about it. Everybody talks about depression and anxiety. The conversation about mental illness is dominated by those two illnesses, leaving less room for people with other mental illnesses like OCD, ADHD, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, eating disorders, PTSD, and others that I don't even know about. And here I am taking more space away from those illnesses to talk about mine. If I had any guts, I could be talking about my experience with anorexia, but I'm not ready to talk about that yet. And how many people could I be helping if I weren't so afraid of that? And let's be honest here, Thought Slime. You're going to put your Patreon link at the end of this episode. We both know you're going to do it. You're just taking advantage of people's sympathies. You're just trying to scam money out of everybody. You're cultivating a parasocial relationship that lets you bilk them. Do I honestly think I have something new to say about depression or anxiety? Do I honestly think my perspective is going to bring anything new to the table? People come to my videos to be entertained. They don't want to be bummed out. The whole point of these videos is to make people laugh, and here you are being a bummer. You're going to make people worry about you. What if your family sees this? Everyone is going to think you're weak. You have veins everywhere in your body. That one's not really related to the video. It's just really stressful for me. Why does my body got to be full of little blood tubes? Doesn't feel right. I don't accept it. I won't accept it. And I wish I could tell you that I can turn off the part of my brain that believes that kind of garbage, but I can't. I can't give you the simple feel-good ending of pretending like I conquered my problems. There's something I'll always struggle with, but in the end, I'm able to cope with. Every day, I get messages from people telling me that they're struggling. People who are having the same problems as I'm having and think they're alone, and I can't be there for everybody. Last time I checked, I have over 200 YouTube subscribers. Even if I could be there for everybody, I'm not sure that it'd be a good idea or something that would be good for me long term. I once thought for a very long time that my problems were unique to me and that I was alone with them. It was only when I had someone explain the commonality of my experience to that of other people who were having anxiety attacks that I began to heal from those problems. So, as icky and vulnerable as I feel, I kind of have a responsibility to talk about it, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. Honestly, I'm still thinking about veins. I might need to lie down for a minute. I don't like thinking about veins this much. Are there veins in your back? If I lie down, am I going to crush the veins in my back? Hi friends, thanks for watching this video. I'm fine. I'm fine. Why don't you click like and subscribe to me here on YouTube, where I post videos every Friday. Usually they're hard-hitting journalism about why I think Stranger Things is kind of weird. Or what if a pizza looked like Garfield? Uh-oh, that's a real thing that's happening. I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/thoughtslime, but I feel compelled to tell you that you really don't owe it to me to donate if you can't do that. I really want to stress that point in this particular video, because I get a lot of messages from people telling me, oh, I wish I could support you, but I'm not in a place to do that. That's fine. It's okay. I'm all right. Don't worry about that, please. I'm very grateful for the people that do, but it's by no means a thing that you have to stress about. Please, God, don't let it become that, because that will keep me awake at night, worrying about the way that I'm exploiting all of you. Please don't send me information or pictures about veins. It's not funny. It won't be cute for me. Please don't do that. And if there's one thing I've learned about having an internet platform, is that when you politely ask people not to do something, they always listen.